I'm T-Set, and this is a Tea Time Lapse, and I'm finally back with another video about the little fairies that live around T-Set's cottage. Since my last video, the design of the Mallow fairies has changed a bit, and these sketches were my process developing those changes. I just opened a document and sketched away until I found the tweaks I was looking for. I really liked the ear and tail shape I had come up with, but I knew I felt very awkward drawing the torso, and I wasn't sure about the flower marks on the belly and the cheeks, but I knew I needed some other detail to really fill out the design. For a very short bit, I contemplated getting rid of the belly because I felt like that was the source of the awkwardness when I was drawing the torso, but I felt like that was such a charm point of the design that I couldn't give it up. At a certain point, I realized I could move the shoulders lower down on the body and give the characters a thicker, longer neck. And I ended up liking how this changed the silhouette of the character. It lent itself to a pear shape that better accommodated the belly. And that created space in the design for them to have a collar of petals. I really liked the design at that point, so I just started testing it out by drawing them in different poses. I wanted to make sure that the body I had given them allowed them to be expressive, that I would be able to effectively depict their emotions and personalities. Once I was feeling confident in my design, I wanted to develop 3 individuals who belonged to this species of fairy. Thinking of the fairies as individuals has got me thinking about what their names will be, which in turn has me reconsidering my placeholder names for each of the fairy species. I've just been calling these Mallow fairies, but I think I'm going to call them Floralings for now. And as I design more of them, I think I will allow them to resemble a larger range of flower species. So far, I've been referring to the pink one as Mallow, the green one as Sorrel, and the yellow one as Buttercup. And I hope that by my next fairy video, I will be able to tell you more about these fairies as individuals. When I added the $5 Patreon tier that gets you in the scroll at the end of my videos, I was thinking about the different roles the fairies might play around the cottage, and how those could be likened to different Patreon tiers. And first up is Mallow, the Floraling, inspecting the quality of some tea time snacks. My first idea was them enjoying a chocolate chip cookie with their cheeks full. But for whatever reason, I was just struggling with my art that day, and nothing was turning out quite right. I forged on ahead, hoping that maybe it would come together at some point. Sometimes I just need to keep working on it, and as I go, I'll notice what isn't working and be able to fix it, and end up with a piece I do like in the end. But by this point, I could tell that that wasn't going to happen this time. I still finished flatting it though, and shared it with my patrons, and then went back to sketching. It's actually funny how fixated I was on the idea of Mallow eating a chocolate chip cookie for this picture, because mochi is canonically her favorite snack. But I guess I really had chocolate chip cookies on the brain that night. After sketching for a while, I finally went to bed, and then while I was in bed, realized, oh of course, Mallow should be eating an Ichigo Daifuku. So when I woke up the next morning, that is exactly what I started sketching. And luckily that was a better art day for me. I ended up getting 3 out of my planned 4 drawings done that day. And starting on the line art, drawing went a lot more smoothly this day. In case you're unfamiliar, Ichigo Daifuku are a kind of mochi that are a strawberry surrounded by red bean paste that is then wrapped in a layer of mochi or glutinous rice cake. If you are from the USA, you might be under the misunderstanding that mochi refers to something that has an ice cream filling. This is actually a type of mochi, but not all mochi has ice cream inside. Most do not, and in fact, sweet bean paste is the most common traditional filling. And here's the final drawing of Malo, unless I come back and shade all these later on, which I might do. But for now, let's go check in on the Leafworker gnomes. As you may recall from last time, I'm very happy with my Leafworker gnome design. So these sketches aren't about redesigning any element of them, they're instead about me familiarizing myself with drawing them. And Leafworker gnomes is a bit of a mouthful, so lately I'm trying out calling them leaf caps. When it comes to names for individual leaf caps, I've been thinking about Welsh tree names. For example, this leaf cap that I've been drawing the most, I've been calling Gwernen, or alder tree. I think that makes sense for the leaf caps to name themselves after trees, since that's one of the two things I value most, the trees and craftsmanship. And Welsh, or Cymraeg, is such a cool language. I had like a 50-day ADHD fixation where I was learning it. Unfortunately, after those 50 days, my ADHD did move on, but I still think it's a really cool sounding language, and I would love to come back to learning it at some point. Gwernen is the leaf cap who is closest to Tyset. Gwernen first visited Tyset while serving as an ambassador for the leaf caps. After Tyset awoke, the leaf caps wanted to figure out diplomatically if there was going to be any trouble from her. Tyset reassured Gwernen that there was no trouble with the leaf caps remaining in the forest around the cottage, but it was learning that Tyset draws and therefore has a craft of her own that won respect and trust from the leaf caps. All leaf caps have mustaches. The exact shape of their mustaches and their noses varies from leaf cap to leaf cap. And of course, there are very many different kinds of leaf hats that a leaf cap might wear. They also all have dark brown-black fur and pine needle tail tufts. Since Gwernen is closer to Tyset and also more responsible than a floraling, he might actually help out in the kitchen when Tyset is making snacks for tea time. So I made this drawing of Gwernen holding a strawberry and a teaspoon, while thinking of my Tier 2 patrons, Recipe Keepers, who from now on will be featured in the scroll or crawl at the end of my videos. And starting the line art. Looking back on this picture, I do think I should have made Gwernen's shoulders a bit broader, but other than that, I do think it is a nice drawing of him. This coming year, I really want to draw the fairies more. I really want to explore their individual personalities and what their daily lives are like, maybe even making very short slice-of-life comics. I think that's going to be one of my goals for 2026. And time for colors. I love how easy it is to make a convincing strawberry just by making the highlights accommodate the dimples around the seeds. And here's my finished piece of Gwernen. Now, you may recall that the third Tea Time Fairy is a dandelion fairy. And sweet as he is, his design just wasn't working for me. I like the dog energy and the bird feet, but the design just doesn't quite feel like it's there. And I felt stuck with it. But one day I had the idea for a fairy with a mane of hydrangea flowers. I gave them a flat face with fangs, kind of monstery but cute. Honestly, I originally intended it to have more cat-like energy, but it ended up being something of a hybrid between cat and dog. And by this drawing, I really was feeling good about the design. At this point, I was just thinking of them as hydrangea fairies, and thinking that the different individuals would have different colorations. But as I was considering alternate names for the different fairy species, I came across the botanical term corym to describe different flower formations. Hydrangeas have corum inflorescences, so I thought it might be fun to expand out into different flowers that have corums in the future. So different individual, what I'm now calling corum chimeras, would have different flowers. I haven't drawn any other corum chimeras yet, but I'm looking forward to it. I did this angle to figure out how the coloration worked, but it's pretty funny that I gave you this full-on butt view. Now, I currently only have 2 Patreon tiers, the $2 tier and the $5 tier, but I have thought about what other tiers would be if I were able to offer them in the future. So this is my Tea Guardian illustration. My Tetons are kind of big and clunky compared to the fairies, so I thought it would be more fun to draw a Chasen on the whisk stand. I think corum chimeras are a bit more playful and maybe even naughty than the dandelion fairies were. I do think corum chimeras are replacing dandelion fairies in the tea time lineup, but I'm not necessarily getting rid of dandelion fairies. I do want there to be many fairies and spirits around Tiset's cottage beyond just the regular tea time fairies. At this point, I checked my reference again and realized I needed to tweak how I had drawn the fairy's face. I do need to come up with a naming convention for the individual corum chimeras. I think hydrangea just might be a bit of a mouthful for this kind of character, so I'll think on it. Watch me get lazy, or smart, and mirror the rest of the tines. And time for colors. I decided to make the Chasen tines be wet to make the picture a little bit more visually interesting. And here's the final corum chimera drawing. And now for the last drawing of this batch, which you might be surprised to hear is not Nonamela, but one of the teapot spirits, Houlhin. Houlhin is the smallest of the teapot spirits, with Dobin being the biggest. I've only drawn Houlhin twice before, once in a Kiyomi drawing and once in a little sketch with a Malo fairy. The teapot spirits don't have quite as much individual personality, they're kind of just observant. They're essentially a type of Tsukumogami, or possessed object yokai. But in the world of Tiset's cottage, they are also affected by Tiset's leaking magic, so it's not just the way that objects get spirits in Shintoism. It's kind of a mix of things. Since the only other color drawing I've done of Houlhin was a Kiyomi version, this was my first time coming up with what pattern would be on them. Since Houlhin is so small, I wanted to make sure that I kept it fairly simple. And here is my final piece of Houlhin. I wonder who gave Houlhin all that wood sorrel. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to all of my patrons for your support. All patrons get 2 months early access to my videos, as well as closer looks at the art that I make.